The fedora-wearing Jon Hudson comes on in for the Unbiased UFO Report. And we love him when he does. He brings his fedora, he brings his chin hair, and he brings his UFO stories. Jon, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out and for sticking with us for this. And boy, it was quite a show tonight. So I'm glad you guys all have enough energy to stick for this. But I think things are finally starting to pick up a little bit.
I'm going to get you to bring your microphone up just a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry. I think it slipped down. There you go.
That's okay. Now you're sounding beautiful.
You're
sounding beautiful. Hot day in the UFO world today, starting off with investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. Shadow person.
So this is man. I mean, honestly, with the right. I mean, honestly, I honestly I could do like a 3-hour panel on this topic. So let me first set up. So what this came down from is a fantastic interview that Generation Z did of Ross Coulthart from a couple days ago. I highly recommend everyone go check it out. I'll provide links for it in my notes. I'm referencing it twice tonight. It's worth it. It's good. And in this interview, one of the things that Ross talks about, which he'd mentioned in other places, but to me, he'd never gone into this much detail except for here, is he talks about the fact that he was in communication with a person who held tickets. I mean, what I mean by they had clearances. And they were in that field, and basically what they told him was that at one point, while inside a very secured facility, meaning like a TS or high, TS plus type, facility. Basically, he saw what he believed was a shadow person enter the facility. And he never told anyone. Because shadow people are mystical. And therefore, they're dangerous to talk about because you could get your career ruined or you could get ridiculed. So what happens? He doesn't say anything. Well, guess what I would do if I was in Russian intelligence? I would start offering bonuses for anything anyone could invent technologically that looked accidentally like magic. Because obviously that's the stuff that's going to get by because the Americans aren't going to report on it. This is terrifying. I mean, this is terrifying because the thing is that, and let's change the fact. Let's say there was no shadow person. Let's say he has a mental problem. He's working in a top secret facility. I want to know that. So I still want to know if he's seeing things, right? I mean, that's the thing is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's seeing things because it's paranormal, if he's seeing things because he's mentally ill, if he's seeing things because there really is something there, if he's seeing things because he's had some kind of a effect, like creating a world where it's not safe for people to report. I mean, in the real world, like, you go to any public facility and it's like you see something, you say something. You see something, you say something. That's the rule. You see something, you say. You don't judge whether what you've seen is important or not because you don't always have the skills to do that. And so whatever you see, you report for this exact reason. And boom, what do you do here, right? I mean, to me, it's a very scary notion because, let's assume that all these sightings were something paranormal. Well, that's a little odd, actually. Probably someone should find out why they're doing that. But let's not assume that, and let's assume that this has been going on long enough that there have been some clever Russians that have figured out that, hey, if we get our tech to look enough like a ghost, they're not going to report it. And I mean, I assume people look into that already, but I mean, that to me, that's terrifying. The idea that you couldn't report something like that. And I understand why. I understand the practical matter of it, but I'm saying it's broken and it needs to be fixed.
Why do you think Ross Coulthart took so much time to talk about this?
So I need to go back and re-listen to the interview because if I remember correctly, I think he mentions this in his book. But if I remember it in his book, it's just like a 2-sentence quick passage. And it just so happened that it was a good interview. And these two cats that were interviewing him, they were asking a lot of really good questions, and they asked about this, and so he went into more detail than I'd ever heard him go into before. And the problem
Ross,
is that it's based on an anonymous source, so
right.
there's only so much you can do with it.
No, I understand that. Ross seems like the type of guy though where he is trying, I've talked to him a number of times, but he seems trying really, really hard not to engage the woo. You know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't want to go down that path, even though he knows that's the path eventually he's going to have to go down.
Yeah, I would agree. I would add to that though. I would say that he's less resistant to the woo than I think his predecessors have been. I've seen more of it bleed into his reporting when it's been part of his reporting. Like when it's followed the data, he's fully willing to report it. It has to be something that he has tangible, something he can show for.
Interesting. Do you see him going more into detail about that now that he's kind of let the cat out of the bag?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he might report more on it, but I think the challenge is that with it being an anonymous source, it's just more of an anecdotal story to kind of point out something interesting than it really is something that's actionable. But to me, it hints at something that's so potentially serious that like someone needs to invent something actionable so someone can look into this. And it's not like I have any. I don't even at this point in my career, I don't have any contact with anyone that could make this happen. But to me, it's just it's a very scary notion.
Sounds like they need some Merle there to check out the shadow people.
Yeah, there you go.
I know you don't like that. I know you want to go make toys for it, but this is a situation where we need Merle.
Oh no! Oh yeah! No! I mean, look, shadow people. I mean, let's face it. What they need is they need Merle to go in there and give them a big hug.
All right.
Big fluffy hug.
All right, let's move on to topic number 2 that you got for us tonight. UFO Jesus, aka Ryan from Post Disclosure World, apparently has an anonymous personal source discussing the current divide between Congress and the Pentagon. What's this all about?
So this is fun. I mean, once again, look, this is the night of anonymous sources. I'll just warn you all. And so once again, this is an anonymous source. So what can you do with it? But it's a personal source to him. So it's someone that he trusts implicitly, and it's someone that has just told it to him. So he's bringing it to us as a unique source, and so he's sharing it with us. And so for those reasons alone, he should be recognized and thanked and all that stuff, regardless of whether it turns out to be accurate or not. But we've all been hearing grumblings enough around that there's already been support growing for what he reports. And basically what it reports is that there is a kind of a trifecta or a hat trick or a perfect storm brewing between Congress and the Pentagon over this entire topic, because certain things have happened that have brought it to the forefront in a very grand way. And the things he talks about, and once again, I'll provide the link, and it's short, so I recommend everyone check it out. It's good. Is he talks about the fact that that for many of the members of Congress, they were not aware of the nuclear connection before. Like they'd heard rumors of it, but they had no idea the gravity of it and the heaviness of it. That has had a huge impact. That there has been much more fidelity in data and video offered to many members of Congress. And essentially, what was being reported by this one individual is that is the kind of the second leg of what's going on, is that data is just so impactful and so emotionally just stunning in a way that it's really shoving people over the edge of whether they want to act on it or not, right? And then you build those two things up, and then you have the third thing, which is the dawned realization that for the last 70 years, people have been blowing smoke up their rear ends. I mean, it's like this has not been a shining example of transparency and continuity of data between the defense apparatus and the voted in apparatus, right? I mean, this is 70 years of. I mean, I don't like to you're much better at picking on them for this than I am. I don't tend to do this, but let's face it, there's a whole lot of good reason to be mad. And so you take these three things together, and you can start really seeing how the groundwork has been laid for a lot of people in Congress that maybe were, in the middle, or even a little on the outside of needing to act. And these three things, and the thing is that even if he wasn't reporting this, I think these are three things that a lot of people could come up with, and we could just come up with noodling it over a whiteboard as reasonable catalyst for what would drive this. But the fact that Ryan has someone that he knows and trusts who's telling him point blank, these are the things that are happening, and the divide is growing, and it's getting ugly, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
Do you ever wonder where Ryan gets his sources from? This is a guy who came out of nowhere and all of a sudden has all these big name people talk to him, and good for him. At least they're talking to someone.
I assume they're a little
because of this intriguing platform that he has.
I assume they're little like chubby cherub UFO Twitter creatures that like bring him. Yeah, I honestly like I think that in the beginning, not taking anything away from what Ryan's done, but I think a lot of what's happened to Ryan is because of his excellent timing, and he was such just a bright, fresh, fun, non-serious face in all this in the beginning. And I think he just, I mean, let's face it, at the end of the day, anyone talking like this online is participating in a personality contest. And Ryan's just luckily a likable guy, and so I think that plays into a lot of it. I think he is a very likable guy. But I think this is a good story, and I hope he pursues it, because the thing is that while I think it's great everything that he's done. To me, the only point of doing what he's doing is if he can eventually turn it into something bigger and something maybe more impactful. And that may not include journalism. It may be a different route, but it could include journalism. And so I'd like to see him do more stuff like this. So I think it's cool. I'd like to see him encouraged.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. But, we have talked about, and we're going to probably continue this conversation when we get back from break. We have talked about this great divide. Luis Elizondo has talked about it as well. And in some of the private chats I've had with others have talked about this incredible divide between the factions of government, those who do not want any disclosure compared to those who think we need to start learning about this. I mean, no offense to UFO Jesus there, but I mean, is this really something new, learning about this great divide?
No, and I hope I tried to allude to that, and maybe I should have done a better job, but I think at one point he does as well. No, that's the thing, is that everything that he said is all, for the most part, that we've been hearing rumors of from different places. But what this is it all put together with a nice pretty bow on it. In that he's hearing these things, he's hearing fairly specific details that he reiterates if you go listen to it, and he's hearing all three things from one source, and for him it's a trusted source. So for him it's a data point that updates his model very fast in his mind, because it's a trusted source for him.
No, that's very true. Jon Hudson's here with the Unbiased UFO Report, as we got about 30 seconds left. Jon, when we look at Washington, D.C. and everything that's going on around this, there is a lot of silence around this so far, and not many people are talking about this subject. Do you expect that to heat up very soon?
I think ultimately, a lot of them are just they're going to listen to their constituents, right? They're going to go back home at the first chance they have, and they're going to talk to people. They're going to do town halls. They're going to listen and prod, and they're going to feel it, because basically, if their voter base stands behind them, even if a faction of it does, they'll go gung ho. But they got to be supported.
UFO Jesus, otherwise known as Ryan from Post Disclosure on YouTube, recently made a video stating about how there's a government official who let him know off the record, well, not off the record, but secretly, as a source, about the great divide in Washington, D.C. regarding UFOs. Jon, welcome back.
Thank you. And as we were mentioning before, nothing, you know, I mean, unless there was some detail that Ryan mentioned that I didn't catch, you know, none of this is, you know, shocking new information. It's more details in some cases. Like I said, it's all coming from one source, which is nice. It's certainly a much more convenient source. But it is, you know, it is, and and let's face it, right? It 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 speaks to human nature. It speaks to how most of us would feel in that exact same situation. Those are the three pillars of frustration that would arise for a lot of us. And you put those three together, and some of us are going to boil over the edge.
Okay. Why do you think there is this great debate going on? Many people may not even know that it's happening.
Um, well, I mean, very plainly, I think anytime you've been doing one thing for 70 years and people want to do something different, you're going to have each group pick their sides and debate the issue. But you know, but if you drill down just a smidge, what you have is you have well, you have several different factions that are basically uh, fighting their position for different reasons. You have some that feel that others can't be trusted with technology. You have some that feel that they can be trusted with technology, and that's exactly the problem. We don't want them using it, and we don't want them getting better than us, so we have to keep it to ourselves because we want to stay 50 years ahead. There's other people that believe that we don't know what we're doing, and we're lucky we haven't blown up the planet, and so we shouldn't let anyone else touch it. I mean, there's so many options. I mean, it's endless.
No, it's very endless. But, you know, the one big debate is when it comes to politicians in this subject is can we really believe that they have been naive on this subject for so long? Granted, in order to have that job, you have to have the ego the size of Manhattan in order to make it or break it because politics will chew you up and spit you out very, very easily if you don't have a strong backbone. And I can see where UFOs don't really make it to the scorecard regarding that subject. But I'm still a little bit obtuse, if I could use that word about myself.
Gang of Eight. I think the
Gang of
Gang
Eight.
of Eight had some knowledge.
What is the Gang of Eight for our people?
The Gang of Eight are basically the 8 members of Congress that hold the different appointments within Congress that require the highest level security clearances of any other positions in Congress. So basically, the eight individuals with the highest level clearances within Congress are considered the Gang of Eight. And its members don't change super often, but obviously it does change because you know every 6 years you're rotating senators, and every 2 you're rotating House.
No, and I can understand that and believe that, and that makes sense. Do you think though that the way this subject is going, that it is about money, that it is about profit, that it is about jobs, if it's all of a sudden announced privately or publicly that there are crash retrievals?
No, I mean I don't think it's no, I don't think the government's lack of desire for disclosure has anything at all to do with profit. I think Lockheed's lack of desire for disclosure probably has a lot to do with profits. I think that Northrop's, and I think that Boeing, and I can give you a whole list of companies that I can bet you are very 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 focused on it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that math really works for me.
Why?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible, but to me, it's kind of like a
Well,
weird
don't
thing.
go back on your word here. I'm going to call you out on this one.
But no,
Don't go back.
but I just realized I just lost track of what we were talking about. So remind me again, so I can make sure I covered it right.
In regards to whether or not it's about profit.
Oh no, it's not for profit. No, because the thing is that people in government, it, the government is actually a nonprofit. They don't make money, so like you don't get more salary, you don't get a bonus, right? You don't get like right? Like what you get is you might get a promise that when you get out in 8 years, you get a job, right? You might get that kind of thing, right? But it's now the people within these companies, yeah, for them it's all about profit, right? But you got to realize that I come from a different mindset than a lot of people, in that I it's my understanding of the way all this works that the instant anything goes from research to any type of production whatsoever, it has to be farmed out to the private companies. And those private companies have to have expertise in what they build, which means that any innovations that you use in those vehicles, they need to be learned at least enough to design, manufacture, and repair them, right? And so, as far as I'm concerned, like there's I don't think anything illegal happened in that transfer of information. I don't think it could have happened any other way. I think it legally had to happen the way it did. And essentially, now that those private companies have it, they do have their purse strings tightly tied to the government. So if the government said you must turn this over, they will. They don't have a choice in the matter. They'll probably sue for a couple of years. But I mean, let's face it, Lockheed's a public company with shareholders. They're worried about people's 401ks.
As they should be. Just, I don't know. I think there's a lot of naivety being played on this subject from the bill on down. That's just me.
Oh yes. Well, and keep in mind that like the Gang of Eight, I mean, those guys, I don't think they knew a lot, but quite honestly, they could know everything. And they will stand in front of you and play out whatever level of knowledge they're supposed to have. And they'll play it to the T. And it'll be hard to tell.
All right, John, final section tonight. The Department of Energy naturally perfect for UAP research. What does this mean?
So this is just basically me taking advantage of what Ross talked about in that interview to draw attention to one of my hypotheses. It's just completely self-serving, I'll be honest.
Oh, that's cool.
So basically, in this great interview that Ross did, and once again, I'll provide the link. One of the things he talks about is his belief that essentially that if there is any material or any recovered material that has ever been in possession of the U.S. government, or is still in possession of the U.S. government and hasn't been given off to private companies, that where it is, if anyone has it, it's at the DOE. And so they basically break out and talk a little bit about why the DOE is such a big deal for him. And essentially, I wrote this document basically, saying that that's exactly what I think is happening, right? And so I can't read this entire document that I wrote because it would take too bloody long to read it. But essentially, and I'll post a link to it. But because as you guys can tell, I'm a teeny bit verbose. And essentially, what I point out is at several levels that if you look at the DOE is responsible for detecting a detonation of any nuclear device above ground on Earth, full stop, no exceptions. So that's a responsibility, okay? 2, they're responsible for responding to any incident anywhere on the globe within a very short period of time. So any plane goes down with nuclear material, any missile goes down that shouldn't have, anything gets dropped by accident, some other country does something by accident, we will still deploy. And so we already have teams of highly specialized people on call, ready at a drop of a dime to fly anywhere in the world, cordon off the place, come up with cover stories, move large material out of the location, because they're already used to having to move reactors and missiles and airplanes and so forth. So they already have all that kind of gear, right? And so essentially what you have is that you have, and it goes into, they have their own classification system. So they have a completely separate classification system that includes 12 broke out classifications, which gives them a lot more fidelity into how they divvy out security within their organization. They have control of the 17 national laboratories at the 17 national universities. So they have control of much of the research that's been going on, and they have control over what research is, they can influence that research, right? And finally, because of the testing that they've done in the past, and because of the storage of nuclear material, they have a tremendous amount of underground facilities that they could be then using for storage of other material. And if you think about it, if you have like a large area where 23 containers are full of like dirty nuclear material, and the middle container has nuclear material, has UFO material in it, right? You're not going to you're not going to care, right? So I mean, it's to me, it just, to me, the UAP is just, if you just take everything that the DOE is meant for, and take nuclear explosion, atomic, and just replace that with UAP, you can see how, so why set up another division to do this? Why bother going through the effort of creating a whole other division that can respond like this, that has these kind of sensors, that has the acoustic network across the ocean floor, that's listening for acoustic sounds over a certain decibel rating, that's looking for seismic activity? I mean, the DOE is watching this planet. They're the ones doing infrared on a global scale. They're the ones that, and they've had to do it. They had no choice. They've been forced to do it because they were responsible for nuclear material. And so just by accident or not, they end up being geared, looking to be purpose designed to handle this material.
It would make sense. That's if the private contractors, John, don't get their hands on it first, like Lockheed Martin or Boeing or places like that, Raytheon.
Right, but they have to get it if it wants to be used. You can't use it otherwise. There's no way to use it. You can't build anything. You can't, the Army can't build tanks. Bad things, like all hell would break loose, right? They have to, everything has to be farmed out for competition.
Well, I very much hear you, man. I very much hear you. We only got about 1 minute left here. So where do you see this going? If your theory is correct, where do you see it going?
Honestly, nowhere at all. DOE is a vault. I mean, they have their own SAP programs. I mean, they're a whole different beast. No, it's they'll release what they want to. Nothing will be forced.
Gotta love them. Fedora John, another great episode of the Unbiased UFO Report. Once again, you're kicking butt, taking names, and bringing us all the news on what's happening. We absolutely love you here, buddy.
Thank you much. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and appreciate it. And if anyone has any other questions, you can always hit me up on Twitter. Happy to talk about it.
All right. Jon Hudson, the fedora-wearing one, with the Unbiased UFO Report.